Welcome to the fourth School-Based Mental Health Examples of Practice webinar. My name is Liz Krupsak, and I'm the School Mental Health Consultant at DPI. I'm joined by both Stoughton and Menominee Indian School Districts today, who will share their experiences with supporting student and staff stress and anxiety. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared when it's closed captioned. And as always, feel free to add any questions that you have to the chat box, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end for additional questions. So when we're thinking about how to support students' stress and anxiety, it's important to first define those two things. So generally, stress is a response to an external cause. So things like a big exam or an assignment, presenting in front of peers or having conflicts in friendships. When those situations are resolved or the stressful event has passed, usually the feelings of stress are resolved as well. And feeling stress is really a normal part of life. Anxiety, on the other hand, is a person-specific reaction to stress, and the origin is usually internal. So anxiety is typically characterized by persistent feelings of apprehension or dread in situations that aren't actually threatening. So unlike stress, anxiety persists even after the concern has passed. And in more severe cases, anxiety can escalate into an anxiety disorder. According to the Child Mind Institute, anxiety is normal and healthy. When we're presented with something dangerous in the world, our anxiety response protects us from danger. It makes us hyper-aware and primed for action. The fight or flight response. So anxiety disorders arise when we develop out of proportion anxiety responses to things most of us cope with easily and that happen every day. So that big exam that causes one student to be stressed can trigger an internal anxiety response in another student. And this student might feel apprehension or dread about all tests and might feel that way even when a test isn't imminent. This becomes problematic when the apprehension or dread associated with taking those tests starts to interfere with daily functioning, like if it leads the student to skip school on test days, for example. For many students, unhealthy thinking styles like perfectionism can also exacerbate the development of those out of proportion responses seen in students experiencing anxiety. Now, expecting excellence of ourselves isn't problematic, right? We want students to strive for excellence. However, the problem comes in when a student's sense of self-worth becomes intertwined with their ability to achieve. So this can lead to a fear of failure and an inability to tolerate making mistakes. You might see students setting standards beyond reach and reason, or becoming depressed when they're faced with failure, or even being preoccupied with fears of failure and disapproval, and even becoming overly defensive when they're criticized. So unfortunately, it appears that perfectionism is on the rise. A 2017 meta-analysis looked at perfectionism in birth cohorts from 1989 to 2016 and found that younger generations experience higher expectations from others and set higher expectations of themselves than previous generations, with the biggest increase in pressure youth feel from others. So if it feels like kids are more stressed about achieving than ever before, this rise in perfectionism could be contributing. Besides creating stress and anxiety, in its unhealthiest form, perfectionism can lead to eating disorders, depression, high blood pressure, and even thoughts of suicide. So when we're thinking about addressing student stress and anxiety, we need to also think about how we can address perfectionism in students. As with any aspect of mental health, the best way that we can address student stress and anxiety is really by implementing a continuum of supports. So on the prevention or universal end, we can work to create environments that are safe, predictable, structured. We can also provide students with opportunities to learn to cope with stress by developing strong social and emotional skills, particularly in the area of self-regulation. Additionally, we can provide students with ongoing opportunities to learn and practice relaxation skills. So we're just going to look at a few examples of stress reduction techniques that we can teach students at a universal level. It's important to teach these strategies when students are calm and really to practice them often. And just a reminder, teachers can serve as a really excellent model of how to use these skills in times of stress and anxiety. So the first strategy is progressive muscle relaxation. Progressive muscle relaxation is a technique used to reduce stress and anxiety by alternately tensing and relaxing different muscle groups in the body in order to create relaxation. The idea is that since people often tense their muscles when they're stressed, they can reduce anxiety by learning how to relax their muscles. This technique can be taught universally and easily accessed by students in times of need. There are lots of videos, scripts, and audio tracks available online to help teach this skill to a variety of ages. The second technique is guided imagery. Guided imagery uses mental images to recreate a sensory experience that evokes positive emotions associated with those experiences. So there are many opportunities to teach and integrate this practice into the classroom. Students could start their day or class period with guided imagery that helps to set a goal or intention for the day. A teacher could lead a class through guided imagery before standardized testing or a unit test or class presentations. This could also be used when teaching a concept that is really difficult for students, allowing them to visualize patience and success. So the more students exercise this muscle when they're calm, the better they will be at using it when they're feeling stressed and anxious. The third strategy is diaphragmatic breathing. So really that's just a way of saying deep belly breathing. And the way that is helpful is that it signals the nervous system to relax and it decreases the heart rate and blood pressure. So focusing on the rise and fall of your stomach as you breathe can shift the focus to the here and now off of the stressor or the source of anxiety. So diaphragmatic breathing, just like the other strategies, can be taught using a variety of videos, children's books, and audio tracks. The next technique is cognitive behavioral strategies. So teaching students about thought holes. So that's really about identifying and challenging unhelpful thinking patterns and that lead to unhelpful behaviors. So oftentimes, anxiety is the result of unhelpful thinking styles that can lead students to have unrealistic unrealistic expectations or to ignore positives in situations or even just having the belief that their emotions are facts. So we can teach students to identify thought holes and stressful and anxiety provoking situations and challenge those thought holes with kind of three different steps. So first you can teach students to check for those thought holes. So we can teach them what they are and how to recognize them. Teach them how to collect evidence to paint an accurate picture of a situation. So finding out if there's things that contradict what they're thinking. And then just challenging that original thought. So the link at the bottom of the slide provides an excellent lesson from Edutopia on thought holes. And then a strategy for addressing stress and anxiety that stems from perfectionism is to challenge the myth of perfectionism. So the myth of perfectionism is the idea that many students have that perfectionism will lead to success. The reality we know is that perfectionism often gets in the way of success. So adults can help students challenge this myth with a couple of different questions. So things like, does it make it hard to finish school assignments on time because nothing is ever good enough? Um, does perfectionism trigger test anxiety, which disrupts how well you perform on that test? Does it cause avoidance of situations for fear of making a mistake? Does it prevent you from trying new challenges to avoid the risk of failure? So, shining a light on the way perfectionism hurts them can help them foster a willingness to try new things and lead to a reduction in feelings of stress and anxiety. So, now we're going to hear from the Menominee Indian School District about a strategy they're using to support student stress and anxiety.
There we go. Is everything coming through correctly?
Yep, we can hear you and we see your slides.
All right. My name is Ryan Coffey. I'm the trauma coach at Kashina Primary School. Um, we are located on the Menominee Indian Reservation. As you can see, we're kind of northeast Wisconsin, about 40 miles northwest of Green Bay. We are a pre-K through fifth grade school, about 450 students and approximately 70 staff members. We started our journey to support our students' anxiety and stress with trauma-informed care training, historical trauma training, and we really wanted to, start looking at some of our traumas here with our native students, and we, with the historical trauma built in, which is kind of unique to our population. Those trainings were supported by our tribal clinic, and they now continue the trainings with community and staff members as well. We also have been implementing the restorative practices, and then we partnered with a group out of Kansas City at Crittenton Children's Center. It's called Trauma Smart, and they came here for 2 years and did training once monthly for all of our 4K through fifth grade staff. That Trauma Smart program is unbelievable in implementing proactive strategies with your kids who are experiencing that stress and anxiety. To continue with that, we do all new staff that comes in. I am now the trainer for that, and so I'm taking them through those 10 modules of Trauma Smart training. So that way we're ensuring that we maintain the same language and common practice, no matter if you're a veteran teacher or new staff coming aboard. And with our veteran teachers, we also do the booster trainings with that every year. So it's not just one of those trainings where, oh, someone came in once, we did it, and then we never hear about it again. So we're trying to ensure that with those booster trainings, we keep everybody up to date, and also we can gear those trainings towards our needs and make it real KPS specific, I would say. And so we try to keep that up, pretty regularly. Our day for our kids starts in with a morning check-in, and this is the first thing they do when they walk through the door of each classroom. And the reason we have that put in place is it kind of gives our teachers a heads up as far as what are kids' moods and feelings as they walk into the classroom. And it's done anonymously and discreetly, so nobody else can hear it or see where the kids are checking in. And that way it kind of, we have kids that they don't want to share things in front of everybody else, and it's hard for even them to approach an adult and say, hey, something's going on, I'm not feeling quite right. And so by doing this anonymous check-in, it's kind of their secret way, I guess you'd say, to tell the teacher that, hey, something's up. And with that, it allows the teacher to kind of have that door's already open and they know something's up, so the teacher can approach the student and say, hey, is there something I can help you with? Or, is there a place that you and I can maybe sneak out in the hallway to talk for a minute, and just to kind of see what's up. And so it opens that door for conversation, and it really has been a great tool for our teachers because, I mean, if you think about it, working with kids every day, so many kids walk into our classrooms with issues that have nothing to do with school that we don't know about unless the kid has the courage to come up and start to talk about it. So this is kind of our backdoor way of opening that door of conversation and making it easy for our kids to just kind of let us know that something's up. And this, the front seat, back seat trunk that you see, that is a It came from Trauma Smart, and what they did was kind of they relate the parts of your brain to a car. You know, the front seat, you're in control, you're using your frontal lobe. The back seat, that's kind of the midbrain where your emotions are stored, and the trunk is, you know, that back survival brain. That, you know, that's the, you know, when you're absolutely feeling not safe and you need to get out of there, that fight, flight, or freeze reflex, that is where that comes from. And so they simplified those parts of the brain to a car. And so this is what we teach to our kids every day. And this is how they check in. They check in the front seat, back seat, trunk. And so that's just a model of an example of one of the things that we use. So I just wanted to show you that. Also, right after the kids check in, we do morning mindfulness in every classroom in the building. It's just 15 minutes set aside for our kids to just kind of push the reset button on their day. So, you know, maybe something happened on the bus, or maybe something happened at home before school. This is our way to say, okay, this is our time to push the reset button. And after this mindfulness, you know, we're going to be ready to learn. And so we set up, different teachers set up different things in their classroom. Some have little cozy corners for the kids to kind of just lay down in and close their eyes. Other teachers have kids, you know, just sit at their desk with their head down, and they're playing, you know, sometimes powwow music or the Native American flute music, or any sort of just kind of relaxing, calm music, along with, you know, turning off the lights or dimming the lights, to just kind of create that calm setting for our students to just start their day and kind of have a soft landing, and put whatever, you know, stresses that they brought into class with them, just try to put those behind them, and start the day off, you know, fresh. And so that's how we start it in each classroom. Also, in the classrooms, we have, and actually every room of the school, each room has a safe zone. And what that is a place for a kid to go if they're just not feeling quite right, if something's bothering them, or something's on their mind. Each room has that safe zone where a kid can go to and just, you know, kind of relax for a little bit. And we want those in place, and they're kind of self-monitored by the kids. So that way, when they're feeling like that anxiety and stress building up, they can go there. And the nice part for those is, you know, let's say a kid's in class and, you know, their math is getting real frustrating, and you know, they just need a break for a second. They go over to the safe zone, and that way the teacher can continue to teach, but also can see that, okay, the student's over there, something's up, they might need a little extra hand with something. So the teacher can continue the teaching, finish out the lesson. The student hasn't left the room, so they're still hearing the lesson. And that way, when the teacher's done, you know, teaching, and, you know, maybe has a minute, they walk over to the student, you know, is there anything I can help you with? Or, you know, what's going on? How can I help? And it just kind of, we see it as a win-win for not only the students, but the teachers as well. Inside of those safe zones, we have calm down boxes. And for our younger kids, you know, 4K to second grade, we have things in there like, you know, just a small stuffed animal, pinwheels to help them do their deep breaths and spin the pinwheel, just various fidgets. And you know, we gave each of our teachers a calm down box with things in it, but teachers, you know, they're very resourceful, and they've added things that they feel are right for their class and their age level. Some great ideas for the older kids, you know, because kids in third, fourth, fifth grade aren't going to sit down and blow a pinwheel necessarily. So teachers have added things like Rubik's Cubes. They've laminated those mazes where, instead of, you know, using a pen to go through the maze, they can just trace it with their finger, so it doesn't have to be replaced all the time. They put journals in there just so kids can, you know, if they want to get something out, they'll just journal it. And so they've added those resources to their calm down box, and it's been a great tool for us. And I use the word tool. That's a big thing that we need to preach with the teachers, is because sometimes, you know, people will get that calm down box and they look at it as a toy. that are in there. But if we teach it to the kids as a tool, and this is how the tool is used to help you and your body and your stress, then kids view it that way. And so we really like to preach that the things in the Calm Down box are tools for you to use. So that way, when you need those tools, they're available to you. So that's a big important step with those Calm Down boxes, is just preaching that they're tools, not toys. The next step after the safe zone is our reflection room. And this is a room where kids can come. It's not used in a punitive way at all. They're not sent here as a punishment, but maybe something's up with a student and that teacher is, got a classroom full of 20 kids and they can't have that one-on-one with that student right then they can come down here, and it's myself and another staff member that are in here all day. So there's always at least one of us in here to be that ear for a student to come to, or that shoulder to cry on, or maybe they need a hug, whatever it is, but they come here and they can, get those feelings out, talk about what's going on, and, we can do our best to try and comfort them and help with, whatever situation it may be. For us, it's been very successful. As you can see on the screen there, last school year, we averaged about 250 kids a month. So, there's a lot of kids using it because it fills a need for them. And so, a big thing with trauma-informed care is, it only takes one caring adult to change a kid's life. And so that's what kind of where we use as our motto for our reflection room. We want to be here for our kids at all times. So, we try to make that available and give them the resources they need. The pictures just show some different kind of social emotional things that we have done in here, getting the kids to identify their feelings and, putting them out, showing us what they look like, what that feels like, talking about examples of, when were times that you felt certain ways and things like that, just educating the kids on their emotions and feelings. And so that's what the picture is showing there, just different activities in our reflection room. To tie in, all of the Trauma Smart work that we have done, to reduce that stress and anxiety for our kids, we are also holding parent workshops. There's 10 sessions in the school year. We're teaching the parents the same topics that we taught our teachers, but we're doing it in lessons that relate to their home. Just the other night we held one and we talked about the importance of routines for kids and how that provides safety and comfort. And so then we talked to our parents about how they can provide routines for their kids at home. And so we're trying to develop the same concepts from school and putting them into the homes with the parents. So that way the kids are constantly supported with the same common language and supports that they're hearing at school. We say that we can only do so much in the 8 hours that we have the kids. So if we can empower the parents to also use some of these skills, it's a win-win for both parents and the staff. So, those calm down boxes that I talked about earlier that we use and the safe zones, that is one of our topics that we teach to the parents is where can your child make a safe zone at their house. We give them each a calm down box to take home. So that way they can, talk with their student about making that safe zone at home and a place they can go to feel safe. And if they're being overwhelmed with some emotions at home. So that parent piece is, so vital in education, and it is also with the social emotional learning for our kids. So it's nice, and it's been very well supported by our parents. We have had great success, and this is now, I believe, our 4th year of doing those. And, we have some parents that have come to everyone for 4 years, and we also have, some that are, come to as a new parent this year. And so it's been a great mix of new and old veteran people that have been coming. And so it provides for great discussion between parents, because they're sharing things that work for them and frustrations that they have, and it's kind of like a big support group for parents, and it's been, I think, a great asset to our school and our kids. And with self-care, it's a big thing that we preach to our parents, and we're preaching to our staff. We know that we can't be the best teachers that we can be if we don't take care of ourselves. And so to support that for our staff, we have made a staff self-care room, and it's just a couple of a recliner and a nice cushy couch. And just we dim the lights. As you can see in the picture, we have some lamps. We tried to create the old tropical beach scene there with the decal on the wall, and just kind of allow our teachers to, maybe for 10 minutes of their prep time, they can go in there and just, step out of their classroom for a little bit and, take that time for themselves to kind of clear their head, whatever stresses, maybe they had a rough morning, they can just kind of put that behind them and say, okay, this is my reset button. And when I get back to class, it's a brand new class that I'm going to be teaching, and let's start fresh with the kids. And so we have given them the staff self-care room to do that, and we encourage them to use that as much as possible. Along with the staff self-care room, we have certain self-care days put into our schedule that we just, a lot of our in-service days are filled with PD and things like that, professional development for staff. A lot, and staff sometimes just need self-care, some time to do completely different things that don't really relate to work. And so we have implemented those self-care days as part of our in-service sometimes, and just try to add different activities for our staff to do to just kind of build camaraderie, bond with each other, and take care of yourself, and the more that you can boost morale and camaraderie amongst your staff, then you have staff that, we feel kind of looks out for each other and takes care of each other in times of need. And so we try to support that as much as we can. We also, for our students that have greater needs than what we can support, we have our Student Health Center, which is located about a block down the road. And that is staffed with certified teachers as well as counselors, so they can get counseling, every day if they need it. They can really dive into some of the bigger issues that some of our more needy students have. And so it's kind of a combination of academics, but also mental health work being done with those students. And that's kind of been a great blessing and a unique situation that we were able to put together for our students. So that's, like I said, for some of our more needy students who need more support than what we can give them here at school. But that is a school run facility. It's not, it's completely part of our district. So it's not like we're sending them to outside sources. It's just more of a one-on-one center for them to get the more intensive help. So just to sum everything up, this is kind of a list of, things we have done for our school, things classroom specific, and then our community portion as well, because, it takes a village to raise a child, and that community is definitely a big part of that.
Great. Thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing your really comprehensive approach to supporting student stress and anxiety. We'll just take a second. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat box now. All right, I'm not seeing anything, so we'll continue on. So we're going to now shift a little bit and focus specifically on addressing adult stress and anxiety, so building compassion, resilience, and staff. Oh, I do have a question, actually. So someone is wondering if you have 254 student visits monthly or 254 students visiting?
254 student visits monthly. I would say out of those 254, we probably get, I'd say probably half of those are the same student, and then the other half are kind of a mix. But we have certain ones that come in here every day and kind of do a check in and check out for their day. And then we have some that, we try to do preventative stuff with
Mm-hmm.
to, if we know there's things going on in their family or things, maybe they had a change in household or a parent, left or whatever, we try to do proactive things with them, and maybe we'll call them down here and just discuss how they're doing, how are things going at your new house, or wherever the issue may be. So we see, I would say about half of those kids on a regular basis, and then the other half are just kids that come down for various issues that they want to talk about.
Great, thank you. Any other questions before we move on? All right, well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stoughton School District to talk a little bit about their work with building adult compassion resilience.
Hello. Hey, can you see my screen? I want to make sure it's working.
Yes, we can, and we can hear you too.
Excellent, excellent. I am Jeff Emmerich, the principal over at Sand Hill Elementary.
And I am Kayla McDermott, the school social worker here at Sand Hill Elementary.
And it was really good to see some of the work that is being done for students. Our focus is mostly on staff this year, although we have done some focus on students in previous years and even this year. It's kind of an ongoing. But this year, actually over the last couple of years, we've really focused on staff. We know that it takes a healthy staff member to really help students through some difficult times. But sometimes when staff members take on all the stress, everything that they're hearing, it can lead to some compassion fatigue. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Just tell you a little bit about Stoughton. Sand Hill is a school of about 460 students. We have 3 elementaries. There's about 1,000 to 1,100 elementary students in Stoughton, not including the middle school or the high school. All right.
So as we work with students and families who have experienced trauma and work to approach them in a trauma-sensitive way, we know that educators can start to develop their own traumatic stress. And we know that outside of school, educators have their own stressors as well. So in order to best serve our students and staff, we want to make sure that we are helping staff recognize and understand the effects of things like secondary traumatic stress, burnout, compassion fatigue, and make sure that we're working with them to increase their resilience. And we feel that we are able to do that with the Compassion Resilience Toolkit.
All right. And how we got started, it's over the past few years, we know that there's been a lot of changes in the educational landscape, and it's really taken a toll on all educators throughout Wisconsin, and Stoughton is no different. The amount of time teachers spend during doing schoolwork, off hours, the information they share with us staff members or with the principals about, kind of where they're at. We've got educators leaving the field altogether. We had a couple of them leave the field altogether this year. And the significant decrease in the candidate pool for educators, sorry about that, it's just really said we've got to do something about, this changing climate that we're seeing, and our teachers that are just taking on way too much, and where can we draw some lines, or what can we do to help our staff members out? So in 2017, we heard about the Compassion Resiliency Toolkit, and we invited a DPI representative called, her name is Monica Whiteman, in to really tell us more about that toolkit. I'm going to tell you, after that training, or after that informational gathering, it was a couple hours, I think the staff were saying, yeah, this is really good stuff. We want to explore it. So after the training, we sent 2 staff members, which is Kayla and a school psychologist, to become trainers. so they could come back and kind of lead us through the toolkit. And that's a tool that's also available. I know the DPI does offer some trainings in it. We found the tool so helpful. Anything you wanted to add to that? All right. So the buy-in piece, as you can relate to the ever-changing environment that we're in, you know, that's talking curriculum changes, dwindling workforce. You know, we just found that compassion resiliency needed to help teachers understand and start to care for themselves. And I think that's kind of where we found they were lacking. I heard the previous presenter talk about, you know, perfectionism and taking on everything and having to do everything absolutely perfect, and you know, kind of helping teachers through that. And so we wanted to help them understand what compassion fatigue was, what teacher burnout was, and the need for them to take care of themselves. To really highlight this, what is, and it's kind of in my notes here, but we kind of did the following professional development. You can find this on the toolkit. It's called What Can I Control? And during this activity, staff identify items that they have little to no control over. They identify what they believe leadership has control over, and they also have some level, they identify areas that they have some level of control over. And then they kind of go through this, and we kind of put it all up on the board, and then we can cross over the things that they don't have control about. So visually they're seeing, okay, you know what, I don't have control over that, I'm going to cross that off. So that helps, you know, to reduce the list of stressors, but also as an administrative team, there might be some things that we identify that we can help to take off their plate. One of the things that the previous presenter did was he incorporated a room, like a staff self-care. We call it a mindfulness room here, where teachers have time where they can just go and really, you know, take time for themselves to regenerate, to rejuvenate. But we wanted to meet staff where they were on their journey of compassion fatigue, and give them as much resilience strategies as possible. There's a lot of activities that are also linked on the compassion resiliency toolkit. I would encourage everyone to kind of take a look at it.
Yeah, and just going off of that, I think another way that we created buy-in with staff was with the toolkit being so flexible, and we were able to kind of tailor the content and the presentation format to fit each school, each elementary school, and each staff body. So like Mr. Fembright said, meeting staff where they were at on their journey of compassion fatigue and resilience.
Now, earlier this year, we put in a new process, restorative practices, the circle process, and we put it in for equity. And so we had some equity circles, but we decided to take that same process and use it for compassion resiliency as we kind of went through. So as we kind of go through, and we're not through all of our areas that we're kind of going through, but we have addressed compassion fatigue. So we'll take a whole professional development hour and 15 minutes to get in a circle, and we have small groups. I think there's 7 different circles. So all staff members are broken up into different circles. They all kind of go through a script that is prepared for them, which is also available on the toolkit. And we kind of talk about compassion resiliency as far as what does compassion fatigue do for us? What are some things that are in our control? We had some, because we already had this trust developed, the circles developed. I know in the group that I ran, I had teachers saying, you know, boy, it's really getting hard. You know, it's getting tough. And so part of it is to be able to open up and say what they're feeling. But the other part is, it's like, who can you turn to? What are some of your strategies that you can implement as you kind of go through some of these feelings that we go through? And I think we're all familiar with the winter blues, and that's, you know, it's a phenomenon that's been going on for a long time, and it gets really, really tough. And we need to be able to count on one another. It's kind of like being a family and working through some of the really tough times together. It's not an us versus them, it's a togetherness. And that's what these small group circles do for us. And everybody has a voice, everyone can share, and the trust is within the group already developed because we have these circles in place. So the first one was compassion fatigue. We're going to be going over expectations for ourselves and others, setting, appropriate expectations. And the last one is boundaries. And, sometimes we as teachers don't know how to say no. And this here gives us an opportunity to say, I've got a lot on my plate right now. I think I'm going to have to take a pass on this one. And that's okay. I'll let Kayla talk about the other two elementaries.
Yeah, so kind of how I mentioned before, the website for the Compassion Resilience Toolkit just has a wealth of knowledge on it. And it kind of goes through different sessions, steps for compassion, compassion fatigue cycle, expectations of ourselves and others, boundaries. And within those kind of topics, like Mr. Femright talked about, there's circle scripts that we can pull from. There's activities and videos and readings for staff. So as you can see, we're kind of doing a few different things at the different elementary schools, but we're pulling from that toolkit to get the same content. So I'm the social worker at Sandhill Elementary and Kegonsa Elementary. And at Kegonsa, we are doing the format a little differently. We have 9 professional development days that are devoted to more of a presentation, informational portion, and then working in small groups and doing some activities during that time. I do have a teacher co-facilitating with me at Kegonsa, which has brought, I think, a good perspective. She often shares mindfulness strategies and talks a lot about organization and ways to prioritize for teachers. So that's been really great. A great addition to the toolkit content. And then I can't speak too much about Fox Prairie, but they are as well doing a presentation activity format during professional development days.
One of the things that I think we found to be really successful is to really celebrate even the smallest things as a staff, whether it's an increase in test scores, whatever it might be, just celebrate and recognize. Another thing that we do to help staff and just to show them that we care and we really appreciate it, we give staff shout outs, and we have an employee of the month. So if staff sees other staff members doing something they think is really cool, we want them to be recognized. So that we have a link, and they get a shout out, which gets put in the staff bulletin for everyone to see. And then we pick one staff member every month that will get priority parking for that particular week. Maybe because they did something way above and beyond, or maybe they needed recognition or whatever it might be, but we wanted to definitely recognize, and then those small celebrations. We know that the smallest words and the smallest gestures of appreciation can go so far, and we want to make sure that every staff member feels that. So we try to do our best to recognize the great work that our people are doing every day, so they feel like they're valued. Challenges, yep, time, as you can imagine, is a huge challenge because we've got to dedicate all of our time to curriculum, and got a lot of curriculum changes for last year, and then we're going through some more this year, and so hard is time to dedicate, but we just decided that it's important to dedicate time for this. Staff need to be good or on their best, being able to take care of themselves for them to really help our students. And if a healthy staff is helping students, that's where we want to be. And also some of the challenges is sometimes we get into some really uncomfortable feelings and we surface them. And sometimes it can even make administration or other teachers feel a little on the defensive side. But it's okay. These tough conversations and letting them express is so important, and listening to how they are feeling. It's really important. So we want to make sure that also when they do express some of the feelings, we have some ideas of some of the supports or resources that they need. So that's important.
Yeah, and then some of the successes, I think we've received a lot of good feedback so far, and teachers and educators are liking that we have this time devoted to different activities and strategies that they can implement into their daily lives. So some of the time we're practicing those right during the professional development, and I think that's really helpful for staff. Like I mentioned before, the teacher as a co-facilitator has offered a fresh perspective, and the staff circle process has been really beneficial and successful so far.
And one of the things that we just did a circle last night, so it's pretty fresh in my mind. You know, administration, dean of students, all of our PST, a lot of different people run the circles. We even have teachers running circle, part of the small groups. But some of the feedback that I've gotten so far is, boy, you know what? It's just really nice to be able to be in a safe space with a small group of people to really talk about how I'm feeling, whether it's professionally or whether it's personally. And it's just a safe place. In fact, some of my experiences, some of the veteran staff were able, in the circle process, able to step up and say, you know what, I've been through that myself. Let's talk after the meeting, and I'll give you some of my perspectives on how I got through some of these difficult times. So it's really helping staff build stronger bonds and also make some of those connections, because some of the newer staff, you know, I guess they don't realize, you know, it's a tough job, and some of the different feelings that we go through, and especially this time of the year. Okay. That's pretty much what we have. I would strongly encourage everyone in conclusion is to sign up for the Compassion Resiliency Toolkit. It's on the DPI website. And if there's any questions, me and Kayla would be more than happy to answer.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff and Kayla. Just a quick question for you that I had. If folks are interested in kind of dipping their toes in the Compassion Resilience Toolkit and just kind of getting a feel for it, is there a specific activity or part of the toolkit that you would suggest them to start with?
Yeah, if we go back to the part of my slide, the name of the thing is, if they want to kind of dip their toe in and kind of get a feeling of it, part of it is, the title of it is What Can I Control Activity. There's a lot of activities in there, but we found this one to be the most beneficial because it gave the administration something, it gave teachers something. So we were able to really take a look at, you know, where the teachers are. But as you go through, there's a lot of different areas that help build those resiliency skills within the teachers. And you know, like I said, it's really hard for set boundaries, but I'd say go around, play on the toolkit. It's so well laid out. Anywhere from staff culture to setting compassionate boundaries or setting boundaries for resiliency, and then just taking care of yourself. You know, there's just a lot of great information, but I would, if they want to look at something that was beneficial for us, is What Can I Control is the name of the activity.
Great. Thank you. All right. Do we have any other questions? Now is the time to put them in the chat box. All right. If we have no other questions, we'll make sure to get this webinar posted and captioned as soon as it's finished. Otherwise, thanks for attending, and thank you so much to our presenters for sharing your experiences. And we will see you all in our next webinar. Take care.